Welcome to World Pulse Updates. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The opening weeks of 2026 have plunged the West into a diplomatic crisis unlike any in decades. What started as President Trump's revived ambition to purchase Greenland has escalated into a standoff threatening the foundations of the post-war order. Trump's ultimatum, demanding Denmark sell Greenland or face crippling tariffs on 8 US allies, has sent shockwaves through NATO and the EU. The crisis is about more than territory. It's a test of transatlantic solidarity and the growing strategic importance of the Arctic as ice melts and new resources emerge. Europe and Canada have responded with swift, unified defiance, rallying around Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen's declaration. Europe won't be blackmailed. The world now watches as diplomats scramble and markets brace for impact, with the future of US-EU trade and NATO's integrity hanging in the balance. The decisions made in the coming days will have lasting consequences for global security, trade, and the very nature of alliance in the 21st century. Greenland, the world's largest island, is more than a frozen expanse. It's a geopolitical prize. As an autonomous territory within Denmark, Greenlanders have a strong sense of identity and have overwhelmingly rejected any sale. The US has long recognized Greenland's strategic value, maintaining a critical military base there since World War II. Today, climate change and great power competition have amplified its importance. Melting ice is opening new shipping lanes and exposing vast mineral resources. These resources are vital for modern technology, making Greenland a focal point in the contest between the US, China, and Russia. The Trump administration sees control of Greenland as key to securing resources and countering rivals, but this clashes with European and Greenlandic views on sovereignty and partnership. Vice President J.D. Vance's recent visit to the US base signaled Washington's intensified focus. For Europe and Greenland, the crisis is about self-determination, not real estate. The crisis erupted on January 17, 2026, when President Trump issued a blunt ultimatum: sell Greenland or face tariffs. Trump framed the move as urgent for national and collective security, accusing Denmark of failing to counter Russian threats. The administration threatened a 10% tariff on goods from 8 key allies, escalating to 25% by June if demands weren't met. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent argued American control would benefit all, citing the need to counter China and Russia and to build a missile defense system in Greenland. The administration's narrative: this is not imperialism, but necessary protection for the West. Trump's approach reflects his broader foreign policy: unilateral, transactional, and expecting allies to fall in line. The move disregards diplomatic norms and the will of Greenlanders, who have already voted overwhelmingly against joining the US. Washington is betting that economic might can override sovereign will. The response from Europe and Canada was immediate and unified: a resounding no. Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen declared, "Greenland is not for sale. Europe won't be blackmailed." The UK, France, Germany, and Denmark issued a joint statement condemning the US threats, warning of a dangerous spiral in transatlantic relations. Even Italy's Prime Minister, usually aligned with Trump, called the move an error. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney voiced alarm, pledging increased Arctic security and stressing the need for cooperation through NATO, not coercion. The core of the rejection: respect for sovereignty and self-determination. Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide called mutual respect among allies non-negotiable. This united front transformed the crisis from a US-Denmark dispute into a fundamental confrontation over the rules of the international system. The message: alliances must be partnerships of equals, not relationships of dominance. The diplomatic crisis sparked a wave of public anger, especially in Greenland. In Nuuk, a quarter of the population protested, waving flags and declaring, "Not for sale." The demonstrations were a powerful rebuke, reaffirming Greenlanders' overwhelming rejection of joining the US in last year's referendum. The protests were about defending self-determination and cultural identity, not just rejecting a sale. Solidarity rallies erupted across Denmark, with crowds outside the US embassy demanding a withdrawal of threats. The Danish public saw the ultimatum as an affront to the entire Kingdom of Denmark. Meanwhile, a US poll showed little support for acquiring Greenland, highlighting the disconnect between the White House and public opinion. The push for Greenland is a top-down project, not a reflection of broad consensus. As Trump's ultimatum spread, the EU moved swiftly into crisis mode. Ambassadors from all 27 member states met in Brussels, signaling solidarity with Denmark and the targeted nations. European Council President Antonio Costa called for an extraordinary summit to finalize a coordinated response. The EU is preparing robust retaliatory measures, including a list of tariffs on $107 billion of US goods and the possible activation of its new anti-coercion instrument. This trade bazooka could restrict major US tech and service companies' access to the European market. Such measures would launch a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest economic blocs. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas warned that division within the West would only benefit rivals like China and Russia. The US-EU trade deal, awaiting ratification, is now effectively frozen, a casualty of collapsing trust. Trump's claim that his Greenland demand serves NATO has put the alliance at the center of the crisis. European capitals see the move as holding NATO hostage, not strengthening it. By linking territorial acquisition to collective security, the US has created an unprecedented internal conflict. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is struggling to preserve unity, caught between Washington and a united Europe. The crisis subverts NATO's core principle of consensus and mutual respect. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez warned that unilateral US military action in Greenland would be the death knell for NATO. The Greenland Gambit exposes a fundamental rift. The US sees NATO as a tool for its interests, while Europe sees it as a partnership of equals. The upcoming World Economic Forum in Davos will be a critical venue for confronting this divide. The threat of a transatlantic trade war looms, promising massive disruption. Trump's proposed tariffs would hit key US allies, risking jobs and investment across Europe and raising prices for Americans. The landmark US-EU trade agreement, years in the making, is now dead in the water. The EU's prepared retaliatory tariffs would target iconic American products, escalating the conflict. The bloc's anti-coercion instrument could restrict US tech and service companies, inflicting targeted financial damage. The crisis injects uncertainty into global markets, delaying investment and slowing growth. The division between the West's economic powers creates an opening for China to position itself as a more reliable partner. In a trade war, there are no winners, only widespread economic damage. The Greenland crisis is a watershed moment, revealing a new reality in transatlantic relations. The US's willingness to use economic power to coerce allies sets a dangerous precedent, shifting away from partnership and respect for international law. Europe and Canada's unified response is remarkable, but it's a unity born of necessity against an unpredictable ally. The risks are immense. A trade war could derail economic recovery, and NATO's credibility could be irreparably damaged. The Arctic standoff could intensify, replacing cooperation with tense competition. The world is watching as the bonds of the Western Alliance are tested. The principles of sovereignty and self-determination are on the line. The coming days, especially at Davos, will be crucial. The outcome of this standoff will shape the future of global alliances and the rules-based order.